One thing I've been noticing in this exploration is that truth rarely stays abstract for very long. Once we recognize something as true, it begins to settle into memory. It shapes the way we talk, the way we interpret our experiences, and eventually the way we see ourselves. Over time, beliefs stop feeling like ideas we hold and start feeling like part of who we are. We don't just talk about what is true anymore. We talk about who we are because of what we believe to be true. This process isn't accidental. It's something human communities have been doing throughout history. Across cultures, groups have built their identities around shared understandings of reality. These shared beliefs help answer deep questions. Who are we? Where do we belong? What is worth preserving? When those answers become part of memory, story, and tradition, they begin shaping ego, identity. In the Hebrew tradition, for example, identity developed around the memory of covenant, preserved in the Hebrew Bible. Law, story, and ritual were not simply doctrines to agree with, they were ways of living. They provided a framework for understanding a people's relationship with divine and with each other. Truth, in that sense, was not only believed, it was practiced together. Early Christian communities experienced something familiar. Followers of Yeshua of Nazarene organized their lives around his remembered teachings and patterns of behavior. Those sayings and stories gradually shaped how the community understood itself. One line preserved in the Gospel of Matthew points to an interesting tension. This people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. The statement quietly raises an important possibility. A person can appear to belong to a tradition on the outside while remaining internally unchanged. Identity can become something we perform rather than something that truly transforms us. It reminds us that belonging to a tradition does not automatically mean we are living the truth that tradition points toward. A similar caution appears in the Buddhist tradition. Siddhartha Gautama encouraged careful reflection on the nature of experience and the way we construct a sense of self. One teaching often summarized in the early Buddhist text says, "This is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself." The idea isn't meant to erase personal identity. Instead, it warns against clinging too tightly to any fixed idea of who we are. When identity becomes rigid, while reality continues to change, tension and suffering can arise. Taoist thought offers another perspective. The opening of the Tao Te Ching observes that the way that can be fully named is not the enduring way. Naming things help us orient ourselves in the world, but names can also become rigid categories. When we treat those categories as final, they may hide the deeper movement of life that continues beyond our labels. Even in ancient Greek philosophy, we see a similar insight. Heraclitus famously observed that everything flows and that character shapes destiny. His fragments suggest that identity is not a static possession. Instead, it emerges through our ongoing responses to a changing world. When we step back and look across these traditions, a pattern begins to appear. Humans begin building identity around what they believe to be true, not only because those beliefs make intellectual sense, but because they give the self and the community a sense of coherence. Beliefs answer existential questions. They help people understand where they stand in the world, and once those answers become connected with belonging and memory, they gain emotional depth. This helps explain why challenges to belief can sometimes provoke strong reactions. Questioning a belief can feel less like examining an idea and more like disturbing the foundation of identity itself. The defense that follows is not only intellectual, it is often existential. If a belief feels like the ground beneath our feet, any challenge may feel like a threat to stability or continuity. History offers many examples of communities defining themselves through shared narratives that eventually became difficult to question. These patterns rarely arise from simple stubbornness. They arise from a deeply human need for orientation in a complex and changing world. Yet, something important emerges if we return to the idea that truth is alive and evolving. If truth continues to unfold, then identities built around truth must remain capable of growth as well. Otherwise, identity can slowly become a shell. It preserves earlier insights but prevents new understanding from entering. Living traditions sometimes face this tension. Symbols and teachings that once helped people encounter truth can gradually become fixed emblems that people defend without continuing to interpret them. The desire for stability is understandable, but stability that refuses reflection may eventually distance a community from the very truth it hopes to protect. This creates a delicate balance. Identity, grounded in truth, can provide meaning, solidarity, and moral direction. Without some shared grounding, communities can easily fragment. But when identity becomes absolute, when it resists reflection or revision, humility weakens and conversation becomes harder. The challenge then is not to abandon identity, but to care for it wisely. Identity can remain rooted in tradition while still being open to deeper understanding. Interestingly, many traditions that survived for centuries developed ways to maintain this balance. Rabbinic Judaism cultivated layers of commentary that kept sacred texts alive through discussion and interpretation. Buddhist philosophical schools refined their teachings through disciplined reflection and debate. Christian theology revisited earlier understandings as historical and cultural contexts changed. Taoist thought encouraged adaptability and alignment with the shifting rhythms of life. These traditions suggest something important. The most resilient identities are not the ones that never change. They are the ones that are capable of change without losing continuity. On a personal level, identity develops in a similar way. Our interpretations of experience become habits of perception. Those habits eventually form the stories we tell about ourselves. Over time, those stories begin to feel natural, almost inseparable from who we are. Yet awareness introduces a small but meaningful distance. It allows us to hold our convictions sincerely while still recognizing that our understanding may continue to grow. Communities face an even more complex version of this process. Shared truth can unite people and create powerful languages of belonging and purpose. But the same truth can also become boundaries that exclude other perspectives. This means that holding truth responsibly includes remaining attentive to how identity functions within a community. When identity hardens into a wall that separates us from them, it can begin to obscure the broader human reality that truth is meant to illuminate. If truth is truly alive, it cannot belong exclusively to one group. Its significance must remain wide enough to speak to the human condition as a whole. This realization suggests a helpful way of thinking about identity. Identity can function like a vessel, or it can become something like a fortress. A vessel holds meaning, memory, and commitment, but it can also receive new insight. A fortress protects what's inside, yet it can prevent transformation from taking place. The task then is not to destroy identity, but to allow it to remain a vessel, something that carries inherited wisdom while remaining open to growth. When that balance begins to develop, identity does not disappear. Instead, it matures. It becomes less dependent on rigid certainty and more grounded in an ongoing relationship with truth. Convictions still guide action. Traditions still provide continuity, but they are accompanied by humility and attentiveness to the possibility that deeper understanding may still emerge. In that sense, truth and identity remain connected without becoming fused together. Identity offers continuity. Truth invites growth. Their interaction creates a dynamic tension that allows both stability and transformation to exist at the same time. And perhaps the journey we are exploring is not about abandoning identity at all. It is about allowing identity to evolve into something capable of listening, revising, and serving the greater good without ever claiming final ownership over a truth that is still alive and still unfolding.